Can a socialist choose Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders? Find out today on the Laura Flanders Show when I talk with playwright and screenwriter Tony Kushner. And later in the show, I visit with an art gallery by, with, and for Roma people in Hungary. It embraces hip-hop and bell hooks. All that and a few words from me on moving forwards, not backwards, in Europe. Welcome to our program. Our next guest has been awarded the Pulitzer Prize for Drama, an Emmy Award, 2 Tony Awards, 2 Academy Award nominations, and President Obama presented him with the National Medal of Arts in 2013. This fall, he was entered into the National Theatre Hall of Fame. And no wonder. Among his plays are Angels in America, a gay fantasia on national themes, Caroline or Change, and The Intelligent Homosexual's Guide to Capitalism and Socialism with a Key to the Scriptures. He's written films, among them Steven Spielberg's Lincoln and Munich. He's also written or edited several books, including Wrestling with Zion, Progressive Jewish American Responses to the Palestinian-Israeli Conflict, co-edited with Elisa Solomon. Tony, welcome to the program.
Thanks, so nice to be here.
Let me ask you about Angels in America. I went back and saw it not so long ago in Hungary. I'll tell you more about that later, but it caused me to go back to the text and read it again, and I was reminded how incredibly current its relevance is. Written in 1992, it speaks to a sense of change that people are feeling differently today, I think, and yet it's still as poignant as it ever was. I'm talking about that sense that a lot of people have today, that the world is broken, that states are broken, ideologies are broken, there's chaos everywhere. In 1992, it's almost as if you were suggesting this was going to be a great opportunity for creative, new life and theory creation. How are you feeling about it now?
When I listen to the play now, we just did a revival of it in New York. Well, we did it in 2010. Right. That was 5 years ago. It seems like yesterday. When I hear the play done now, it feels optimistic to an extent. And the parts of it that seem most immediately relevant are some of the darker things. The stuff that's in the play about climate catastrophe is very relevant now. When I first wrote the play, I thought, this is a little sketchy. Am I really right about any of this? Or we're going to just discover this was all nonsense? That was in the late 80s, early 90s. And now, of course, there's no question whatsoever that we're in horrible, trouble unlike any the human race or the planet has ever faced. And that feels very current and very grim, but I still feel optimistic. Mm-hmm. I think that there are many terrible things. It's hard work. We're in one of those periods where reading the newspaper any given day is very, very hard work because there's so much to despair about and so much that's frightening. But I think that we're in a period of a great sort of grappling with questions of definition, and I prefer the moments of real struggle with it, as I think that, for instance, in this country and all over the world, people are doing now, grappling with questions of national identity, and political identity, sexual identity, gender identity, and so on. It's these times are always fraught with great pain and great striving and great suffering simultaneously. But I'd rather be in the middle of one of those times of tumult than in a time of complacency, because, of course, complacency only means that oppression is working and that people are being silenced through tremendous violence. And being kept invisible. At a time like this, when there's been a certain amount of decentering, it's scary, but it is a moment when I think we can feel and see change beginning to happen.
But I guess that's kind of the question. Do we end up with tribalism or solidarity? You've always been a believer in solidarity. To be fair.
And I think that there's great evidence in many quarters of the effectiveness of communities of oppressed people making common.
So give me an example. Cheer me up.
Well, I mean, I think that for instance, the recent successes of the LGBT Q, et cetera, movement in terms of civil law, in terms of same-sex marriage. I think that there was a great coming together of a number of communities, including sort of sexual majoritarian communities, to effect a transformation through the machinery of electoral government. And I think it's been a significant and really enormously powerful and profound change.
But you were one of the people who, in the 90s, I remember your amazing essay for The Nation magazine, Socialism of the Skin, calling for beyond assimilation, for real liberation.
Right.
You got married a few years ago. I don't hold that against you. But what happened to this broader vision of real radicalism?
Well, I think we're seeing it happening. I mean, I think that the aims of the I think that there's no discounting, and I don't think that I did in the essay that I wrote in the early 90s. Angels in America ends with Prior Walter saying we'll be citizens. I think enfranchisement in a democratic society, and this is a functioning democratic society for all of its flaws, is an immensely important thing. I believe in electoral politics. I would prefer to see change come about peacefully than through violence and bloodshed. Yeah. And but I think that as soon as the right is only right about one thing, which is that none of the agendas that they're always warning themselves about, the gay agenda, is limited to just a small sort of, can we please get married? Can we please adopt children? That's not small, but that's the beginning of something, not the end of something. And that any successful movement for civil rights or enfranchisement then opens the door to a questioning of assumptions that were simply not, it wasn't even possible to question before. So, we see people now, the trans movement, the movement of sort of gender questioning, new, infinitely more subtle and complicated dialogue going on about race, about ethnicity, internationalism, and although I think we're lagging behind in this department, economics. I think that there are a lot of questions that are now being asked that will push us more and more to an economically as well as a socially just world.
So I'm assuming you're not suddenly becoming a Republican. It sounds like you're
voting
for Hillary Clinton.
Away from them.
As opposed to Bernie Sanders. But isn't Bernie Sanders the self-described socialist, and haven't you described yourself as a socialist? What has Hillary done to win you over?
Sort of what she said in the first debate, that she's a progressive person who gets things done. I mean, I admire Bernie Sanders very, very much. I've never called myself a democratic socialist just because it's a very specific political movement that I don't necessarily want to, ally myself with. But I call myself a socialist because I believe that there is such a category as economic justice. I don't think that justice is purely a matter of equality before the law. I think that the way that the financial sector, that the economy part of a political economy operates has everything to do with whether or not there'll actually be justice in the world. And I believe that money is not morally neutral. I think it's a human system of meaning. And it can be manipulated for good or for evil, and we have abandoned far too much of the control over it to people whose main intention is evil to the extent that it's absolutely, unquestionably, perversely self-serving for a very, very, very tiny group of people who then convince everybody else that it's in their interests to enrich this tiny group of people.
So that's your view on socialism, but then how does Hillary Clinton get to be your candidate?
Because I think that, and working on the Lincoln screenplay changed me enormously in this regard. I believe that in an electoral democracy, compromise is necessary, and I believe in an electoral democracy like ours where there are two political parties. Well, at this point, you can almost it's almost difficult to say that because there's one political party and then there's this incoherent, shrieking, chaotic nightmare that the Reagan counter-revolution has spawned on the other side. And it's really bad news for American democracy that the two-party system is gone now, and what you have is a party that still apparently has as its front runner for presidential candidate a man like Donald Trump, who is, insane. I think that's a very bad state of affairs. But, I do believe that some of the most enduring, important transformations of human society that I've seen in my lifetime and that I'm aware of as a student of history have come about through electoral politics.
That was one of the criticisms of Lincoln, was that it did a brilliant portrayal of how those compromises got made, and a study of legislation I know of no better on film. But
how compromises got made, and also how the compromises led to a very significant,
huge step forward.
Well, the 13th Amendment.
But there have been a huge movement. I mean, there were movements in the background.
Oh, of course,
There's Frederick
absolutely.
Douglass. Is there a movie that tells that story?
Well, my assignment was to write a movie, the first studio film about Abraham Lincoln in 72 years.
Yeah.
The federal government at the time was an entirely white male government. Entirely. And I didn't want to falsify history. Right. Frederick Douglass is one of the greatest human beings that ever lived and made a tremendous difference in the world. And I wasn't making a claim, Spielberg wasn't making a claim about which one was a greater person, Abraham Lincoln or Frederick Douglass. We were making a claim that Abraham Lincoln was a very great person.
Are you a fan of Black Lives Matter?
Sure. Absolutely. Fan is an odd
What do you think of it?
I think, as I said a little bit earlier, I think that we're in a period now of a new kind of discussion about race in this country. I don't believe that one can say that there has been no progress. I think there's been immense progress. I think it's palpable, it's concrete, but racism is an enormously pernicious and powerful force, and it operates, in ugly, sort of grotesque, obvious ways, garish ways, and it also operates in subtler ways and through subtler systems. And I think that we're seeing in Black Lives Matter and the fights that are being held on college campuses now a real discussion that wasn't possible before about how to begin to envision a society that really responds with sensitivity to subjective experiences that are wildly various and different from one another. And again, that struggle is going to be, it's a groping, and we're always a little blind when we start trying to make something new, but it seems to me something new is taking place.
Two last things. I just can't let you go without talking a little bit about what's happening in Israel-Palestine. You're a big critic of Israel, but you're still call yourself a Zionist. I'm curious.
No, I don't.
You don't anymore?
I've never.
Oh, okay. My mistake.
I'm not an anti-Zionist.
Okay.
I'm a diasporan Jew, and I'm a citizen of the United States. I'm not a citizen of Israel. I absolutely,
Are you a supporter of the BDS movement?
No,
what do you make of
I'm
that?
not. I like a lot of the people involved in the BDS movement in this country, especially. In Europe, it has some strange affiliations. I don't think that Israel is South Africa. I don't think that the model that brought about the end of apartheid in South Africa can be applied to Israel. And I think that a boycott of Israel is not going to lead to anything other than a more unreachable and hardened country more completely in the grips of its political right. I believe that any approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has to be, you have to approach it with a full awareness of Jewish history and the way in which the founding of the State of Israel is a direct consequence of a long and terribly difficult struggle against oppression, and to assign Israel the role of some sort of colonial power dominating the region is, I think, to profoundly misunderstand from at least the Jewish point of view.
It certainly underestimates the evil of the British Empire, if you ask.
Well, yes, exactly. I mean, it's like we weren't, the British Mandate. You can say anything you want about, but that's not in any way to exculpate, the really horrendous treatment of the Palestinian people by Israel. But it matters enormously to me that it seems to me that the occupation and the violation of human rights and kill ratios of 1,300 to 1 is an absolute violation of Jewish ethical teaching. And if I have issues about any state calling itself a Jewish state or a Christian state, or no matter what the history, and I don't know how Israel will ultimately resolve that. I believe in the two-state solution. I call myself a diasporan Jew. I have friends who are anti-Zionists. I have friends who are Zionists, and friends who don't have an opinion at all. And I
keep
think
on wrestling.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tony. Great to be
Wonderful
with you. Thanks for coming in.
Again,
honestly, you can find out more about all of Tony Kushner's work at our website. You can hear more interviews like that on our audio podcast, available at lauraflanders.com. Last year, I had a chance to travel to Hungary, courtesy of the Independent Theatre Critics Association and their colleagues. There, I visited Gallery 8. It's the first Roma art gallery in Hungary. And I spoke with the co-founder and one of the artists. Here's some of that conversation.
I am Timea Junghaus, and I am a Roma woman. I'm also an art historian, and I was born here in Budapest in the A district, which is the district which has the largest Roma population. A district has its own identity. It is the district where most of the Roma people live, where 90% of the students at schools are actually Roma children. The majority of Roma in Hungary are living in very difficult financial circumstances. Here in the city, there are also well-to-do Roma families, those whom are living in historical musicians' families, and have a very strong family history of being an artist or intellectual. Gallery 8 is a Roma contemporary art space. It started in 2013 February, after the A district municipality and basically Budapest closed down all the cultural places and spaces available for self-representation of the Roma people. We put a lot of energy into demonstrating the government's decisions and also trying to save the existing places, collections and initiatives. But in 2013, our team decided that it is time that we do not oppose the government's actions anymore. It is time that we do not put our ideas into the future, that we start performing them in the here and now.
Hát ez egy kommunikációs felület, és mindaz a reflektálás, mindez a múltból való megtörtént eseményekre kell reflektálni.
This is Tibor Balog, a contemporary artist. He grew up in a state orphanage. Tibor was the first. He graduated in 2005, and at the moment he knows about 5 artists who are studying or who have graduated from the Fine Arts Academy.
Szociális üzenete van. Egyrészt koncentrálódik abból a szempontból, hogy itt jócskán romák élnek, cigányok élnek, és az a sztereotíp jelenség, ahol megtalálható itt Magyarországon, vagy Budapesten, a fővárosban, ez főleg ide fókuszálódik, és másképp fog ennek az üzenete lejönni Budán, egy gazdag negyedben, mint itt a 8. kerületben.
It's extremely important to show different images of Roma, those who are educated, those who can provide a role model for the future generations, artists, which is a very untraditional role in the Roma community. So being present in the Roma community in these different roles and providing this image also for the majority society is really unusual. And perhaps sends a completely different message than what we have communicated before. African American analogies are extremely important inspiration for the Roma intellectual movement. And I think what we have to say is even the most difficult circumstances, we need to build on our culture, because basically in the Roma context, culture is the only area where we can talk about the Roma not as a problem, as our friend Du Bois has referred to it, not as a problem, but Roma and Roma culture as an asset. And we also gain a lot of inspiration from African American feminist theorists, and this gallery is actually the proof that opposition is not enough, not even in the Roma context. As Bell Hooks, African American theorist, said, opposition is not enough. In the vacant moment after one has resisted, there is the need to make ourselves anew. So this is the space, Gallery 8, where we make ourselves anew.
Halfway through Tony Kushner's play, Angels in America, 2 old Bolsheviks consider the prospect of the future in a scene set in the Kremlin on the verge of the end of the Soviet Union in 1985. The great question before us is, are we doomed, says one? Will the past release us? 30 years on, as Europeans reel from financial shock, austerity, and the biggest inward migration in memory, it's a question that's still without an answer. What is clear is that the authoritarianism of the past has yet to release its grip. In 2015, right-wing nationalist parties won elections across the continent, from Austria to Poland, Sweden, Turkey, and Denmark. Leading the way, of course, was Hungary, where strongman Viktor Orban has been in office as prime minister since 2010. Orban has a massive majority, just short of 2/3. His only real competition comes from the neo-fascist Jobbik movement. To keep ahead of that, he's used his power to write a new constitution, pack the courts, purge the arts, and rain terror on the very poor and anyone he considers an outsider. Before the war's refugees, it was Jews, Gypsies, and LGBT people. Forward or back? The last time I saw Angels in America was in Budapest in 2013. There, that Kremlin scene played out in what felt like a very contemporary context. Playing Prior Walter, Kushner's outspoken, cross-dressing, openly gay lead was Robert Alfady, an outspoken, gay, cosmopolitan Jew who had just been ousted from his job as director of Hungary's National Theatre to be replaced by an Orban appointee who had sworn to return the place to its Hungarian roots and make the National a sacred space. Cut to the end of the play. The world only spins forward, said Alfady, as Walter, speaking unmistakably for all outsiders. We will be citizens. The time has come. For every night of the run, the normally reserved Hungarian audience rose, clapping in unison, to give the play, Alfady, and the future a rousing ovation. It is a long piece, which ends with the words, "The great work begins." Kushner's right. The great work of forward over backward isn't easy, nor is it over. Not yet. Just tell me what you think. Write to Laura, Laura, @lauraflanders.com. And thanks.